Welcome and welcome back to Really Legal. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. Well, maybe you've experienced or definitely heard about high rent prices in recent years. Did you know you could blame Donald Trump for that? Yeah, we're going to get into that today. I'll give you the good, the bad, and what's next. So today I'm going to give you, I'm going to share with you today how Trump's presidency is behind this rapid rise in rents that we've experienced. So bear with me as we have to start with a little walk down history lane. Do you remember learning about the railroad barons in the Gilded Age of the late 19th century? Ultra greedy businessmen. No, not Elon Musk, more like John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil. They used their control of a market to price above competitive levels. The American people, Congress, we all got sick of their abuse, so Senator John Sherman of Ohio led the charge in 1890, and the Sherman Antitrust Act passed the Senate by a vote of 51-1 on April 8th, 1890, and the House by a unanimous vote of 242-0 on June 20th of 1890. President Benjamin Harrison signed the bill into law on July 2nd, 1890. So the Sherman Antitrust Act has two primary sections to empower the federal government to bust up monopolies and crack down on price-fixing cartels. Monopolies are in Section 2. Price fixing, meaning two or more members, are in Section 1. That's kind of how the Sherman Antitrust Act generally works. However, because of a poorly worded bill, just 5 years later, the Supreme Court of the United States neutered the Sherman Antitrust Act, tossed out a case against the American Sugar Refining Company, who controlled 98% of sugar refining in the United States. But it was President Teddy Roosevelt riding to the rescue with his trust busting and bullied the Supreme Court into dissolving the Northern Securities Company in 1904, reinvigorating the Sherman Antitrust Act, which then ultimately led to the breakups of Standard Oil, American Tobacco Company, and others in the early 20th century. So what does this have to do with Donald Trump and rents? Hang in there for just another minute. I'm going to get to it. So there was also a really important precedent set in 1940 in the Supreme Court. It's called the Saccone vacuum case. And it regards oil companies, surprise, surprise, yet again. And they were doing something called horizontal price fixing. Horizontal price fixing is when multiple market players collude or agree to fix prices, generally with a floor or lowest price to maximize their profits, of course. So when they collude together, they are called a cartel. So in this case, back in 1940, the oil company set a floor price to not drag down the wider whole market and prop up what's called the spot price market, which is critical for 83% of the sales in the oil market back in 1940. They did something called a gentleman's agreement with a dancing partner, meaning so the group of them, I'll buy from that one, you buy from this one, and the spot price goes up because we're going to say this is what our floor is. So this horizontal price fixing between the oil companies at the top did this in an attempt to stabilize the price of oil. And this is what's called a per se violation, is what the Supreme Court ruled. Horizontal price fixing in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. Here's a quote from the Supreme Court. Under the Sherman Act, a combination formed for the purpose and with the effect of raising, depressing, fixing, pegging, or stabilizing the price of a commodity, oil in this case, in interstate or foreign commerce is illegal per se. So how does this relate to Trump? Well, the tech bros had been working on software to help maximize profits for large landlords. I don't know if you know this, but many of the large apartment buildings in the United States are owned by a series of very large, often publicly traded companies that own those apartment buildings. Well, ProPublica in 2022 had an explosive expose on this topic, and lawsuits were filed in Tennessee and Washington, D.C., multiple suits in the state of California, and others. So what this centers on is a software company called RealPage. It started building software, and then it started acquiring other software companies. In 2002, for example, in the lawsuit in Washington, D.C., the attorney general there said in their lawsuit, RealPage purchased its first real estate management product, YieldStar, from a company called Camden in 2002. And I quote, "From the get-go, RealPage used YieldStar as an opportunity for competitors to coordinate pricing strategies." 2 years later, in 2004, RealPage acquired Reopt, which marketed a competing real estate management product company called Price Optimizer. Like YieldStar, Reopt's Price Optimizer used a proprietary model to maximize revenue in the apartment rental market. Well, that alone is not enough to get us to antitrust, right? Hey, just buying other companies, and it doesn't tie us to Trump quite yet. But the key fact in all of these lawsuits is that in their contracts with these apartment companies, they meaning RealPage, requires that the apartment companies share the proprietary data. It's not in the public. The potential renters can't see it. Other companies can't see it. This proprietary data on pricing, thus they get inside information that allows RealPage to maximize revenue. In other words, jack up prices at the cost of renters. And this is some comments from the ProPublica article that should really make your blood boil. Don't worry, I'm getting to Trump in a moment. Here's the quote. "Never before have we seen these numbers," said Jay Parsons, the vice president of RealPage. "Apartment rents had recently shot up by as much as 14.5%, he said in a video touting the company's services. Turning to his colleague, Parsons asked, what role had the software played? So Andrew Bowen, another RealPage executive, answered, "I think it's driving it, quite honestly. As a property manager, very few of us would be willing to actually raise rents double digits within a single month by doing it manually. They're working together, enough companies in one place, raising the rents in coordination. Sure looks like a new cartel to me and my study of antitrust law." By the way, on a side note, antitrust law is not my primary area of practice. However, I am a contributor to the 2018 Matthew Bender California Antitrust and Unfair Competition Law Treatise. So this new horizontal price fixing situation, just what the Sherman Antitrust Act was set up to address. So also according to ProPublica again, quote, "In one neighborhood in Seattle, ProPublica found 70% of apartments were overseen by just 10 property managers, every single one of which used pricing software sold by RealPage. To arrive at a recommended rent, the software deploys an algorithm to analyze a trove of data RealPage gathers from clients, including private information on what nearby competitors charge. For tenants, this system upends. They're not allowed to negotiate anymore. The building staff is told not to negotiate. To rather have a lower tenancy rate but charge higher rents because that produces better profit. So why blame Trump in all of this? It's because RealPage acquired its largest competitor, LRO, according to the DCAG's case, cementing its market position as the dominant player in 2017. Who was president in 2017? Donald J. Trump. It was Trump's regulators who approved this merger, allowing the control of the market by RealPage to become dominant and control where it is used. Democratic presidents have a long track record of disapproving these types of mergers as anti-competitive for consumers, voting them down. Regulators said, nope, we're going to take you to court. Republican presidents love mergers that are bad for consumers because more profit for their billionaire buddies, right? That is the track record. Union busting is a Republican feature. Trust and monopoly busting and horizontal price fixing, cartel busting, that's what Democratic presidents do. The Trump administration approved this merger, helping to cause rent prices to skyrocket under his presidency, which of course continued thereafter. And now we have lawsuits trying to rein it in. So what's the good? Lawsuits by individuals and states under their own antitrust cases have started chipping away at RealPage, and rent prices are now beginning to ease. What's the bad? The first case in Tennessee settled in district court. So we don't actually know how much RealPage and other defendants had to pay, and if there were any other equitable actions in the settlement, such as you can't require people to hand over proprietary data to then calculate rent prices moving forward. What's next in all of this? You gotta vote Democrat for president in November. We've got to fight against Donald Trump. We've got to get Joe Biden reelected. And in 2028, we need another Democrat to be elected. That's what gets the billionaires, generally speaking, these types of situations under control. Give me your comments below. Do you like this kind of comment? Do you like this type of storytelling? Let me know what you think about Trump and this potential horizontal price fixing cartel. Click that like button, smash the subscribe button. I thank you so much for watching. Please, please be sure to share this with your friends, your family, your frenemies. This is Really Legal on the Really American Network. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman.